from this dungeon raise a soul enslaved in so many ways, with bolts of bones that fettered stands, and feet and manacled in hands. Here blinded with an eye, and there death with the drumming of an ear. A soul hung at twere in chains of nerves and arteries and veins, tortured besides each other part in a vain head and double heart.
Oh, who shall deliver me whole from bonds of this tyrannic soul, which stretched upright impales me so that mine own precipice I go, and warms and moves this needless frame, a fever could but do the same, and wanton where its spite to try has made me live to let me die, a body that could never rest since this ill spirit is possessed.
What magic could me thus confine within another's grief to pine? Where whatsoever it complain, I feel that cannot feel the pain. And all my care itself employs, that to preserve which me destroys, constrained not only to endure diseases, but what's worse, the cure. And ready oft the port to gain, and shipwrecked into health again.
But physique yet could never reach the melodies thou me dost teach, whom first the cramp of hope does tear, and then the palsy shakes of fear. The pestilence of love does heat, or hatred's hidden ulcer eat. Joy's tearful madness does perplex, or sorrow's other madness vex, which knowledge forces me to know, and memories will not forego. But what a soul could have the wit to build me up for a sin so fit? So architects do square and hew green trees that in the forest grew.
So this is a dialogue between the soul and the body by Andrew Marvell, and as you can see, the highlighted words are words that I didn't know that I put in this little corner right here. So we have manacled, which is chained or restrained, precipice, which is like a high cliff, and maladies, which is disease or sickness. So the whole poem is pretty much metaphorical. However, we do have some imagery and personification within the poem. So we have drumming of an ear, as it is describing the ear, which is of a drumming action. We also have a fever could but do the same. So it's saying that the fever is warming and moving this needless frame. However, obviously a fever is not a human and it cannot have human actions such as moving. We also have Joy's cheerful madness, so Joy is having the cheerful madness, which personification is adding this nice smooth dialogue, and it's making it more dramatic, and it really helps the poem flow. And then for imagery, we do have nerves and arteries and veins, and palsy shakes of fear. So it's giving us, the readers, a way to being in their shoes. We can kind of picture it in our head how it is, so it kind of helps us dive right into the poem better, helps us understand it better. And this is in a first-person point of view, so the soul and the body are themselves. They're talking about themselves and how they feel. So we have I and me being used throughout the stanzas. So the soul is representing himself and the body representing itself. So we have some different meanings for each stanza. So for the soul, in the first stanza, it's describing its surroundings as it's being trapped within the dungeon, which would be the body. So it's the soul is stuck in the body, but the soul doesn't want to be in the body. It wants to be let out, but it can't. But it's just overall describing what's around it. And for the body in the second stanza, it's describing how it feels useless. It doesn't want to be a part of the soul, and it feels like the soul is actually being like taken over it. So the soul feels like it shouldn't have been there in the first place. If so, the body would just die. So there's no point for the body to be there, is how it's feeling. The soul in the third stanza is describing that it's going through all this pain and it wants to be free. They're saying that it's open to sickness and it doesn't want to go through that. It doesn't need that. It just wants to not be there. And the body in the fourth stanza is talking about how the soul is giving all these bad memories that the body will never be able to forget. So it could be bad memories or good memories. However, the soul is pretty much guaranteeing that the body will not ever forget that sorrowful memories. And it's giving the body all these emotions that are unwanted. It just wants to be a body, like a potato. It just wants to be a body. So, first here are these questions. Who is speaking? Well, the soul and the body is speaking. They're having like this argument between them. To whom or to what? Well, the soul and the body are communicating with each other about how they're feeling and their situation. And the next question, what is the situation? They're communicating through their own point of views about how they're like binded together and the disadvantages of being binded together. What progression develops the situation? Well, throughout the story, actually, not story, poem, throughout the poem, it actually gets a little more aggressive, so that is kind of developing the situation into a more aggressive kind of tone we have going. Is there a meaning beyond the actual situation or the exact words of the speaker? Symbolically, it's not exact, but it's actually within this poem pretty exact. The soul is actually in the body, and the body is like this cage for the soul. So they're pretty much saying what they're meaning. What mental pictures or images does the poem create? The mental picture of the story is one person has two beings fighting within. You can kind of imagine like the soul or your brain or thoughts, something like that, being wrapped up in bones and veins and blood, anything that is actually within your body. And what does this mean? Well, it means that one, they cannot be separated from each other. So the soul is within the body, and the body is definitely outside of the soul. How do they relate to or extend the substance and theme? Well, the mental pictures that Marvel is giving us within the stanza are relating it to the theme that the human thought is the soul. So it's saying that the soul is trapped within, so we can kind of picture that as our thoughts being trapped within. What specific figurative language and poetic devices convey the images? Well, the personification is definitely a big factor in conveying the images, as they're giving live human actions to these emotions or inanimate objects which develop it. What is the attitude of the speaker toward the subject? How can the reader reach this conclusion? Well, the attitude of the speakers is angry, frustrated, sad, aggressive. The reader can reach this conclusion by looking at the diction. For example, we have enslaved, we have die here, we have needless here, pain, destroys, fear, etc. It could go on for a while. The general atmosphere of the poem. The general atmosphere is pretty melancholy. Does the poem imply or symbolize something not stated? I believe that the poem symbolizes that the soul is actually the thought process or decisions or wants needed by actual humans, and the body represents us as ourselves. What is the form of the poem in stanza, rhyme scheme, and or meter? Well, This is definitely A-B rhyme scheme. As we see, we have raise, ways, stands, hands, there, ear, chains, veins, part, heart, etc. Does the poem relate to my life? I believe the poem does relate to my life, as I have thoughts that I know I have to keep inside, and I also have wants that I want to keep inside, and I need to focus on things that I need, and I need to know when to speak when it's appropriate, stuff like that. Have I ever felt this way or experienced this emotion? I definitely have. Maybe if I'm upset with a friend and I want to say something, but I know that it'll just make things worse, I'll just keep it inside, even though I might really want to say it. Does this poem add to my knowledge or awareness? It definitely does. It makes you think about all your thoughts that you've had that you really have to keep inside, or maybe something you really want, but you're not able to express what you want because you know that your needs are more important to get through life. And thought-wise, you really have to be careful of what you say, could get into a lot of trouble.